All right, next up, covalent bonding. Covalent bonding is all about the sharing of valence electrons. So here we go. Similar to the ionic bond, we're going to speak kind of generally here at the beginning. Covalent bonds occur between nonmetals. Nonmetals have pretty similar electronegativities. Don't be scared off by that word yet. We'll talk more about it if that's unfamiliar. But in my last video, I talked about how electronegativity is kind of an element's pull for electrons. And so nonmetals have a pretty high pull for electrons. And so neither nonmetal in a covalent bond is really willing to completely give up their valence electrons, so they share. One of the main goals when elements bond together is to have what we call a full octet, or a full outer energy level of valence electrons. And a full outer energy level generally means 8 valence electrons. So instead of giving and taking valence electrons like we saw in an ionic bond, in a covalent bond, those nonmetals are going to share those outermost electrons so that they both have 8. We're going to see sometimes they don't always share so nicely. So there's a little gray area here in covalent bonding, meaning that even though you have a covalent bond, there's not always equal sharing of electrons like you'll see down here in the pictures and the cartoons and examples that I have. We like to describe covalent bonds as being either polar or nonpolar. So if you have two nonmetals with pretty different electronegativities or different pulls for electrons, one is kind of winning that game of tug of war and holding those electrons a little bit closer to it. So if you look at the picture down in the left-hand corner, we have an example of hydrogen bonding with chlorine. Both nonmetals, however, hydrogen's electronegativity is a little bit lower than chlorine. So chlorine is winning this game of tug of war and holding those negatively charged electrons closer to it, making the chlorine end of that molecule just a little bit negative and the hydrogen end of that molecule just a little bit positive. That's what those symbols, that's what those Greek symbols down there mean with the plus and the minus side. It just means slightly. And then we have also nonpolar covalent bonds. Whenever you have two nonmetals that have very similar, if not the same electronegativity, nobody's winning that game of tug of war. And so they're sharing those electrons pretty equally right down the middle, like you have here with the bond between two hydrogen atoms. They have the exact same electronegativity. So one end is not positive and one is not negative because they're sharing their electrons equally down the middle. So there you have it in a nutshell. A covalent bond is the sharing of valence electrons between nonmetals. When they share equally, it's a nonpolar covalent bond. When they do not share their electrons equally, it is a polar covalent bond.